Now, we are working through the book of Genesis. We've been doing this for a couple of years now, going very slowly. Some chapters we have 3, 4 or 5 episodes. This morning we're going to try and do the whole of chapter 26, which is before you, and tonight we're going to try and do the whole of chapter 27. I found it very difficult to see how they would split up if I did split them up. So the aim is to do chapter 26, so we may leave some points unanswered. The whole point is that I want to get the sweep of what's happening here. Now the first thing is to notice places. Could you have a look please at verse 6 and highlight it in some way, circle it, square it, any way you like. But verse 6 it says, "So Isaac settled in Gerar." That is the first section. We're going to see his visit to this place called Gerar. Then next, if you look at verse 17, it says, "Isaac departed from Gerar and encamped in the valley of Gerar." And that's the second heading. And that covers verses 18 downwards, down to 22. So first is Gerar itself, verses 6 down to 16. Then the valley of Gerar, 17 to 22. And then thirdly is section beginning at verse 23. And you'll note there that they went up to Beersheba. And Beersheba covers the whole of the rest of the chapter. Now Beersheba doesn't mention it at the beginning, but in verses 1 to 5, you might like to scribble at the top there, Beersheba, that's where he came from in the first place. So he's in Beersheba, verses 1 to 5, goes down to Gerar, then moves to the valley of Gerar, and then back again at verse 23. He went up to Beersheba. Now what else can we notice? If you look at verse 15, you will notice that I've left it in bold. The only significance is that the bold reminds me that it's there. Verse 15, it speaks about wells. And then if you look at 18, we've got wells again. And 19, another well. Verse 21, another well. Verse 22, another well. These are significant and highly important today. By today, I mean in our episode. Now, go back to verse 1 and we see that there was a famine in the land besides the former famine that was in the days of Abraham. That was about 100 years earlier, approximately. 100 years earlier there'd been a famine and Abraham had gone down to Egypt to escape the famine. Now, I find this very interesting and I don't have a definitive answer on it, but it seems that Isaac, to escape the famine, verse 6, he settled in Gerar. From Beersheba to Gerar is only a matter of 8 miles. Now, the farmers and agriculturists amongst us can tell me afterwards, can you have a famine that only reaches 8 miles away and where you are is no famine? It seems a bit close to me. That there would be a famine there and not there. But this is the significance of the wells. When there's a famine, it's usually, in those days, because of drought. If you haven't got water for your fields, for your, you've probably seen it about a month ago when we were having the hot spell, farmers were squirting water all over their fields. I don't understand these devices, but I saw one that was ticking round and spraying the whole field. Very important that you get the water, and not only that, for the flocks and herds, for your cattle, for your lambs, for your sheep. The water supply was absolutely essential. But you'll see in verse 18 that he's digging wells and giving them the same name as his father had given them, but there was dispute about all the wells until we get to 32. We've got another well. Way down in 32 we've got another well and that's the first one that there wasn't dispute about. So these farmers that came from Gerar were disputing with Isaac and his family and servants about the wells they were digging, and the people of Gerar said, no, you can't have the water. We want the water for ourselves. So this was the problem. It's a time of drought, a time of famine, and water supplies are absolutely essential. And you'll find in Scripture that often there were arrangements made. Can we have some water from your territory? And Moses later on, when they came out of Egypt, Moses was saying to the kings of the places they wanted to pass through, we will pay for the water. We won't just drink the water, we will pay for it as necessary. So there are the things to begin with. And I can't read my own script here. But let's start with the first section. I want to speak about going to Gerar, the valley of Gerar, and coming back to Beersheba. We have 3 sections to the sermon. There are the 3 bits. Now, as I've said, Gerar was only about 8 miles from Beersheba. It was owned by the Philistines. We read that in verse 1. And the first puzzle that I had was Gerar to be counted as the country that God told him to stay in? If you look at verse 2, God said to him, do not go down to Egypt, dwell in the land of which I shall tell you. Don't go to Egypt. Now, was that referring to the fact that he already moved to Gerar? Or was it saying, don't go anywhere else, stay in Canaan, don't go to the Philistine area either? The scripture isn't clear here. I've come to think that he was slightly disobedient in going to Gerar, that God wanted him to stay in Canaan. That's my initial thought, that God wanted him to stay there. But then you would say, what about the famine? Well, the famine's serious, but if you look at, let me find you a verse. He goes down to, verse 6 goes to Gerar, and the Lord blessed him. I can't see where it is. The Lord blessed him. Yes, verse 12. Verse 12. Isaac sowed in that land and reaped in the same year 100-fold. Now, it occurs to me, you can again correct me if I'm wrong afterwards, but this doesn't mean it was double. It's not 100%. He sowed and got 100% improvement. 100% is just double, isn't it? This is 100-fold. It's 100 times better than he sowed. He sowed, say I sowed 100 seeds, we've got 1,000 seeds coming back again. So it's, 10,000 seeds coming back again. So you've got great improvement here. The point being that if God can supply just 8 miles distance from where the famine was, if God can supply for him there, he could have supplied in the country that he was. He shouldn't have gone. He should have trusted the Lord. Don't judge things by the standards and situation around you. I'm referring to us now. You look around, you read the newspapers, you watch the news on the telly and so on, and to me it sounds like disaster after disaster and problem after problem. And it's as if at times I think they can't be content unless they worry us with the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. But we shouldn't, if we're Christians, we should not be disturbed by it all. The Lord can do anything. He can supply our needs. For example, there was a famine in the days of Elijah. And God said to Elijah, go up to this brook, hidden away in the semi-desert, and I'll send ravens to feed you. Can you imagine that? Ravens are not known for sharing their food, So the fact that God said, I'll rearrange what nature does, instead of the ravens coming and taking for themselves and not giving you anything, I'll arrange for them to bring you food every day. Now, if you were me, like me, you would probably think, oh, well, the first day the ravens come, I'll stash away some just in case they don't appear tomorrow. No, day by day we've got to trust the Lord. The Lord can do anything. And Elijah is one example. More modern Christians have found this to be true as well. I don't know if you've come across the names, but let me give you just three. There's a guy called Norris Groves. We're going back 150, maybe 200 years ago. And Norris Groves was a dentist in Devon. And he decided, by reading scripture, he decided, if you can trust God in those days, we can trust God now. And he wrote a pamphlet about it, which influenced two other people. One of them was George Mueller. Do we know George Mueller? Yeah. He had an orphanage in Bristol. And you think, here's a nice Christian looking after orphan children. I don't know whether you know, but he didn't build the orphanage primarily to look after the children. That was secondary. His chief purpose was, I'm not going to ask anybody for anything. I'm going to pray like they did in the Bible, and I'm going to trust God like they did in the Bible, and expect everything to come in just by praying. And he read what Norris Groves had said in his pamphlet, and he was going to put it into action. So George Mueller, following the example of Norris Groves, incidentally, Norris Groves became a missionary to Baghdad, and there was a plague in the city. There was an enemy surrounding the city, and then the flood came as well. Three things that were attacking them all at the same time. But he said, no, I'm just going to trust the Lord. And even though other people were dying left, right and centre because of these things, his family survived. And he was trying to put into operation what he saw in the Bible and said, we can do it today. And George Mueller was one. The other man he influenced was Hudson Taylor. Do we know Hudson Taylor? Missionary to China. And he felt he should go to China. And again, having read this dentist's pamphlet, he said, I'm going to go just trusting God. And he went to China and never asked for anything. In fact, there's a story of he was back in England and telling people what was happening. And they said, we're going to take a collection. And Hudson Taylor said, no, you're not. And stopped them taking the collection. And he said, I'm just trusting the Lord. I'm not going to ask you for money. I'm just trusting the Lord. Next day, it's reported that he got a cheque for £50, or cash for £50, and the guy in the note said, if you'd taken the collection last night, I would have given you £5, quite happily. But the Lord hasn't let me sleep too well last night, so here's 50. But just trusting the Lord and praying and not trying to work it out himself, but trusting the Lord was the same in the Bible as he is today. And I have to say, from my own experience, nothing as dramatic as those, but I have found that God can do anything in my life and for me and for you as well. He is the same God. He can be trusted. Sadly, such men are rare who trust God for absolutely everything. But I tell you, it's great fun when you do. You know, where's the next meal coming from and stuff like that. It is great. So here we are in the region of the Philistines, and first question I want to ask, or next question, is, was he a good witness? Was he a good witness when he was in Gerar? This is verses 7 down to 17. And the answer is no. He said, first of all, that his wife was his sister. Watch out for this, ladies. Abraham did the same thing. Abraham said to his wife, you're very beautiful. Will you tell a lie for me? Watch it, ladies, if your husband tells you you're beautiful. Not that you're not beautiful, but if that's his starting line, it could be a bit dodgy. Anyway, he said, she's so beautiful, if I don't say she's my sister, I might be killed. So he thought that these people didn't have many morals, that they were happy to kill, not to commit adultery, but bump him off so they can have the wife, and so on. So his witness was not that brilliant. He tried, my phrase here, he tried to blend in with the people at first, verse 6. Tried to blend in with the people in Gerar, but found that he had to compromise, verse 7, in order not to be afraid for his life. It's a sign of his lack of faith. If you're here tonight, we're going to do the next chapter, and Isaac's faith, I'm afraid, dwindles even further tonight as we look at the chapter 27. But it wasn't a good sign here. It wasn't witnessing well in this foreign country. And this is where I go back to. I think God told him to stay in Canaan and not go to Gerar. If he'd done that and trusted the Lord, they wouldn't have had this problem of, is it my wife or is it my sister? And I think it's the fact that he didn't trust the Lord enough. But he's trying to blend in, and notice this, by trying to blend in, he jeopardizes, endangers his most precious relationship. Or in fact, the second most precious. But his relationship with his wife was endangered because of that he'd gone to the wrong place. Trying to blend in, if you try to blend in with the world, if you're a Christian and you try to behave as the world so nobody notices you're a Christian, you will have problems every day. Problems every day. Here, he didn't just lie once, she's my sister. But every day, as he went around the place, he was lying in action, even if he didn't say every day, she's my sister. By behaving as if she was, he was again telling lies every day. And if you try and blend in with what the rest of the world is doing, you will have problems every day. But he tried to blend in, but then notice the Lord made him stand out. He wanted to blend in, and the Lord made him so distinctive that he stood out. Look at verse 12 to 14, please. The Lord hadn't abandoned him. The Lord never abandons us completely. He sometimes steps back a bit if we're going astray, but he doesn't abandon us if we've truly given our lives to him. But in verses 12 to 14, the Lord blessed him. Now remember, this is in the time of famine and drought. And the Lord blessed him. In verse 12, he blessed him with what? I should mention I ask questions from time to time, and you have to respond. These are not rhetorical questions.
A good harvest. A good harvest.
A good harvest. He got the crops. In verse 13, what did he get blessed with? Money. Verse 14, there's three answers here. What did he get blessed with in verse 14? Flocks is the little animals. Herds is the big animals. And servants. All these things, crops, money, flocks, herds and servants, he is being blessed by the Lord. The Lord is showing him that he shouldn't be blending in, but he's standing out because he's the Lord's. And the Lord does this. He makes other people realize that Christians are different, that problems can arise. Trying to remember which one it was. My father-in-law, when he was ill in hospital with cancer and not far from dying, he was so cheerful because he knew he was going to be with the Lord. He was so cheerful. The nurses were overheard to say, does he know what's wrong with him? Because he was so cheerful. He knew he was going to the Lord. This last week I was talking to a lady up in Easingwold. She's had cancer for 9 years. Stage 4 cancer. I don't think you go past stage 4, do you? No, that's it. And she's got it in 3 places. One is in her brain, and I can't remember the other 2. I think one's in her limbs and so on. She's walking with a stick, but 9 years ago she was told she'd got cancer, stage 4 cancer. She didn't ask how long have I got. She said, I didn't want to know, the Lord's in charge. And she is perfectly at peace and happy with the Lord being in charge of her life. And people see this sort of thing and they don't understand it. That the Lord makes us stand out. 2 nurses over in Bradford I was speaking to, and they've been on the same ward for years. I think they were retiring. And these two nurses, when it was known that they were leaving, a couple of doctors or surgeons or consultants, I don't know what qualification, what bit they were, but they came to see them and say, "You can't leave. We have observed that the patients in your ward survive longer and get better quicker than anywhere else. This is just statistically." And these two nurses, they told me, we used to go around making beds, and every bed we came to, we prayed for the people that were in that bed, so that they were praying for each one individually as they went round. And people noticed, the doctors and other medical staff noticed that people in their ward, they got better or survived longer than any other ward. You may try to blend in, but if you take a stand for the Lord, He will make you stand out. You will have blessing when other people don't have the blessing. You will have peace when other people are panicking and things are going wrong. So they tried to blend in, but He made sure that they stood out, and we need to do the same. Jesus' death was not in secret. In the scriptures it says these things were not done in a corner, and the things that happened to Jesus were done publicly. He was crucified for us, but it was all public, and we shouldn't try and have a private Christianity that is just us and we keep it secret from others. Now I have to say, when I was a teenager, I had this problem. I'll come back to it later on, but I used to hide the fact that my parents made me go to church each Sunday. I wasn't too pleased with that. I wasn't about to tell anybody about that. But if we are real Christians, we should be prepared to stand out. Jesus repeatedly in his sermons, he spoke about a city set on a hill, can't be hidden. I like to go wandering through the fields and go for little walks and so on, but most of the time I'm aiming for the next place, which is on the top of the hill. Terrington is a favourite destination. I'm walking across this place, I can see it up there. The city can't be hid if it's on the top of the hill. High Stitnam's another one that I aim for. Or Jesus said the lamp is put on a lampstand, it's not hidden under a bucket or something like that. Jesus said, "Let your light shine before men." Why? So that they may see your Father and glorify him. Let people see that you belong to Jesus, so that Jesus gets the credit, essentially. And in Philippians 2, Paul wrote, "Amongst whom in the world you shine as lights." You shine as lights. He expects us to show that we're Christians. That's Christians of the born-again variety, not Christians who are Sunday morning only Christians, but through the week Christians, born-again Christians, belonging to God. As I said, before I became a Christian, and I became a Christian age 17, I used to hide the fact that my parents insisted I go to church. Then, when I was 17, I got converted. I became one of these born-again variety Christians, and I not only went on a Sunday morning, I started going on a Saturday morning. I ought to mention that this was a Bible study in the centre of Leeds, and I used to walk a couple of miles, and the attraction there was not just the Bible study, they provided us with breakfast. So, temptation there for the teenagers. And then again in the evening, I used to go to a Bible study, followed by a prayer meeting, and then we go to the centre of Leeds. We had a teacher who was known to stand in the middle of Leeds on a soapbox, along with others, stand on a soapbox and preach on a Saturday night. And I thought, how ridiculous. And then I joined them. I joined them because God had changed my life. So that God makes sure we stand out, or we need to make sure we stand out before others. The trouble is, and the applications today are individual and for churches. The two-pronged application all the way through. We individually need to make sure we stand out. Too often I read and I watch on YouTube, for example, churches that are trying to blend in with the world. They are trying to do the same as the world. For years I thought, we can't do it as well as the world. I remember 50 years ago, pop singers. There was a guy called Dave Pope. He was a brilliant singer, sounded just like Cliff Richard, but was an evangelical Christian. And he came to the local town down south in Hertfordshire and gave some concerts. And loads of the kids in the school went to it. I've got no problem with that. But he was exceptional quality. Exceptional. Most of the time, amateurs are an embarrassment. And the Christians don't do it as well as the world does. But churches today are trying to do things the same as the world. I was in Colombia on some Gideon work and went to this church. And I had to give a report. And you think we're doing quite well here with 2 services. First service was 7 o'clock. Second service was 9 o'clock. Third service was 11 o'clock. And they lasted 1 hour and 55 minutes each. And at the end of the 1 hour 55, the side doors opened wide. That lot went out, the next lot came in. In 5 minutes, they had a complete change of congregation. I'm talking about literally with thousands appeared that Sunday morning. But they had dancers on the stage. They had, with streamers and things, I don't know what they call them and so on. But dancing, they had a pop group, they had cameras, they were broadcasting live. So cameras were walking around and poke it in your face while you're trying to give your report and so on. All sorts of things, but doing exactly the same as the world was. And you come for your 2 hours, 1 hour, 55 minutes, and you've done your part for the week. This is not biblical Christianity. This is not. We shouldn't be aiming to be entertainment in a Christian conflict context. What was Gerard's reaction? Can you look at verse 11, please? First of all, the king had to pronounce an edict to protect Isaac because the king recognized that he'd gone wrong. First of all was protection. But then what do we get in verse 14? End of verse 14? Envy. People will envy Christians if they are successful. They envy their success. Then verse 15, what do we get? Opposition, thank you. Opposition, and particularly filling in the wells that they don't. Remember, we've got this famine, we've got this drought, you need the water supply, and they were filling them in so that they couldn't use them. And then verse 16, exclusion, throw them out. Ejection is what I put down, but this exclusion is just as good. Gerar's reaction to their prosperity and the Lord blessing them was not to say, please can we be part of this? It was to say, we're going to stop you. And if you want to follow the Lord, you will find the devil is trying to fill your wells with dust, dirt, all the time. In whatever situation you're in, if the Lord prospers you at all, people will be jealous, they will be envious of your situation, and they will try and stop your wells. All the time it happens. Well, what was Isaac's witness? We've said he went down to Gerar, and what success did he have? I remember somebody telling a story about a guy was walking along this riverbank, and he was passing these fishermen. And you can apply this to you and you can apply it to churches particularly. Walking along the riverbank, passing these fishermen. And he said to them, have you caught any fish? And their answer was, no, but we've influenced a few. And people are just wanting to influence now, not catch the fish as it were. You shall be fishers of men, Jesus said. We don't want to catch men, we want to just influence them a bit and try and improve from that point of view. So let's move on. They were thrown out of Gerar because the king realized that they were husband and wife, not brother and sister. He threw them out. But then they didn't go back. We're in verse 17. They've been down to Gerar. Do you remember how far from Beersheba to Gerar? 8 miles. Halfway back, 4 miles, is the valley of Gerar. He should have gone all the way back, but he didn't. He only went halfway back. This is a problem all over the place. We shouldn't be in a halfway house. It doesn't free us from the problem. We may not be surrounded by the town that we've been in, but he's just been ejected from that town. The problem is the conflict continues, but out of sight of the king. Out of sight of the king. So they are trying to defeat Isaac. And here's where we get all the wells, and you can see I've done it in bold. The wells in verse 18, 19, 21, 22, digging these different wells. And not only were they digging them, they were digging them in the same place that Abraham had successfully dug before. They were going back to the same place, and not just the same place, what else was the same?
Names.
The names, sorry, yes, the names. The names, he called them by the same names. It's interesting how people like to change names today. I was going to say the devil likes to change names, but people like to change names of Christian things. The labels that were on Christian things before, they like to change them and make them suspect that it's prejudice, that it's they criticize us for being unloving and so on. But just check out language that's being used in any situation. But here we are. They find that they're stuck. They're not in the town. They're not back in Beersheba. They're halfway between the two. There's a story in Joshua chapter 9 of a city called Gibeon. Joshua was coming into the promised land. They were ransacking towns and so on, taking over with judgment and so on. I recommend John Lennox, if you know the guy, John Lennox on YouTube, speaking about why all the destruction and so on. It's very good little video to watch. But they were taking over the towns, and then Gibeon, one of the towns that they should be taking over, heard that they were coming, and they put on old rags and took stale bread and came to the Israelites and said, "We've come from a very, very long way away. Please can we make a pact with you?" And Joshua should have asked the Lord, but he didn't, and they agreed to a pact that they wouldn't kill them. And here was Gibeon sitting in the midst of the people. They weren't joining the Israelites, but they were separating from the Canaanites. They're sitting in the, they were trying to be halfway between the two. And what happened to them? All the Canaanites started to attack them. You're not with us anymore. And Israel had to come and defend them. But if you try and be 1 foot in the world and 1 foot in Christian things, Elijah put it as, how long are you going to go limping? These are on 2 different levels. You put a foot in each camp, you're going to be limping every step of the way. And they should have gone back to Beersheba itself. But no, they stopped halfway. And if you try and be in both camps, neither side will trust you. Neither side. The Christians will say you're too worldly. The worldly people will say you're too Christian. You can't be halfway. It's one or the other. Jeremiah, in chapter 6, verse 16, said that we should ask for the ancient paths and walk there. Today, many churches seem to want to find new paths to walk in, to make them, here's the phrase, watch out for this, visitor friendly. Now, I hope we're friendly here. I hope, we make you welcome and so on. But visitor friendly usually means we're not going to tell you you're a sinner needing salvation. It's trying not to offend anybody. And visitor friendly churches, it may mean what we mean by it, that everybody's welcome and we're going to be kind to everybody. But many people, they don't want that. The churches are falling into the same trap as Isaac did here. And now, Very important. We're coming to some applications here. Can you look at, please, verse 2 and verse 24. Verse 2 and verse 24. What phrase occurs in both? The Lord appeared. The Lord appeared to Isaac. He appears in Beersheba before he goes down. He appears in Beersheba as soon as he comes back. But when he was in Gerar and when he was in the valley of Gerar, the Lord did not appear to him. He hadn't abandoned him because he blessed him. And sometimes we accept what is good, the blessings of prosperity or whatever it is, but we can lose what is far, far more important, the presence of the Lord. The presence of the Lord. He hadn't found that in Gerar or in the valley of Gerar. The wells are filled up and made unusable. And I made a note here, and I've said it already. If you live among the Philistines, you will find they're always looking for ways of filling your well with dirt. But then, let's get positive. Verse 23. They went back to Beersheba, and immediately notice the Lord appeared to him. Mr. CHM, can't remember his last name, he marks some points of what happened. Verse 23, Isaac, first of all, he went up. Now notice the direction there, he went up. Physically it might well have been, but spiritually it certainly was. And if you've been out of sorts with the Lord, if you go back to the Lord, first thing is you're going up. And going up is not always easy. I haven't managed to get a good walk in this year. I was planning a 40-mile, a couple of 40-mile walks, and dodgy leg. Said don't even try it at the moment. So I've not been. But I like going up. It's hard work though. Particularly with a leg not like mine, you know. You get halfway up and you look around and you think, well, shall I go down again now? But no, the best view is at the top. If you want a good view, spiritual good view, you need to get to the top. So going up is the first thing. Seeking the Lord is always up. Isaiah 55. For my ways are not your ways, my thoughts are not your thoughts. My ways are higher. Higher, get up higher to see the Lord's ways. Number one, he went up. Number two, verse 24, the Lord appeared to him. And we've said already this is the first visit since verse 2. Number three, he reacts to that. In verse 25, he built an altar. I can't find another altar for Isaac. This is the only one, but it's a reaction to the Lord appearing to him. We did mention, as we looked at Abraham in earlier parts of the series, how many altars did Abraham build? Good biblical number.
5.
Better biblical than that. 7. He built 7. He was always doing it. The thing with Abraham was always, he pitched his tent and built an altar. Pitched his tent and built an altar. He kept moving on because he wasn't settling in this world. And he kept building the altar to show sacrifice to God. It was the altar of, I think, the altar of burnt offering. And we looked at that earlier at the previous service. Next one, number 4. Still in verse 25. What did he do besides build the altar? Before that, he called on the Lord. Suddenly we find that he's praying now. We have no record of him praying in these foreign places. He's now praying. Prayer was reinstated or certainly increased. And this is a sign of spiritual life. How is your prayer life? Mine is pretty ropey, but I want it to be better. I struggle all the time. I want to pray more. Now, praying is a sign of your spiritual state. Do you remember Saul that became Paul? He was going to Damascus as Saul. He arrived in Damascus as Paul. Okay? and he got changed on the way. And God said to Ananias, I want you, rise and go to the street called Straight, and at the house of Judas, look for a man of Tarsus named Saul. Because he's been converted. Now it doesn't say that. What does it say?
Was he praying?
Because he was praying. Because he was praying. Ananias, you need some evidence that it's safe to go and see this guy and that he's a different man. He is praying. When he was persecuting the church, there's no indication of any prayers at all. But as soon as he meets with the Lord, he is praying. He is praying. And it doesn't matter how difficult you find it. Are you aiming to pray more? Are you aiming to spend more time with the Lord? In Gerar, he thought he could fix everything by his own planning. When he gets back to Beersheba, he allows the Lord to do all the planning. And this is a brilliant place to be. I hope you've experienced it yourself in some way in the past, that when you trust the Lord for everything, you have a peace, because the Lord doesn't make mistakes. You can trust him and you can say, I don't need to worry about this. It's in the Lord's hands. I'm going to do what he says. And he will guide us in that. But moving on, next he pitched his tent. We're still in verse 25. He pitched his tent, a sign that he's not settling in this world. Do you remember Lot? He went down into the valley and pitched his tent. And the next thing we hear, he pitched his tent closer to Sodom. And next thing we read is that he lived in Sodom. He moved his tent closer and closer until he moved into the town. We need to make sure we stay in our tent, spiritually speaking. I mean, not literally. You don't have to abandon the house. But spiritually speaking, we need to stay in the tent and not move into the city and take the city's standards. And then, verse 25, last one here, his servants dug a well, and there was no contention. Incidentally, let me just point out something I noticed as I was passing. Verse 20, what was the name of the one? 21. They dug another well, and they quarrelled over that also, so he called its name Sitnah. Sitnah, incidentally, in the Hebrew is almost identical, certainly identical in meaning to Satan. Satan and Sitnah are the same root, so he called it contention. But it shows what the devil is doing, contending against us. So, the sweetness of resting entirely on the Lord, of trusting him for everything, knowing that he will sort out everything. Now, I've tried to put this into words and I cannot do it, but I'd heard about walking with the Lord. And I'm not saying this is my situation all the time, far from it. But I have known occasions when the Lord has put me in a tricky situation and I've had absolute peace because I know he's in charge. The time in Cyprus when the Gideons told me, you've got to go and speak to the Archbishop. I don't know how to speak to an Archbishop. But it went so smoothly. We dropped in at a random time and he had just finished a meeting early, and yes, we could go in straight away. Random time of the morning, meetings all morning this Archbishop had got, but he managed to find 5 minutes spare just at the moment we arrived. We can't fix these things. And other things, when I was flying to Colombia, I got an hour and 40 minutes to change at Miami, and that was ample, but the plane didn't start. It sat on a Heathrow runway for an hour, and when we arrived in Miami, 40 minutes, you cannot change flights in Miami. I don't know if you've ever been there, but you cannot change flights at all in 40 minutes. But 20 minutes after they parked the plane, I was on the next plane. That is impossible, humanly speaking. But when you know the Lord is organising everything, the peace that is in your heart, the peace that you can enjoy, and Paul says it's a peace that passes understanding. Even if it's the illustrations I've given you already about people that have got cancer, dying or already dead, but the peace that they have, there is nothing to beat this. And I can't explain it, but it's so real. It's so real. Don't be put off by anybody that says it's wishful thinking. It is far more than that. He will make sure all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord. Then we find Abimelech's visits, and I'm not going to go into those, but Abimelech and company have thrown him out of the town. And then they realise we've lost something here, and they go and try and make friends with them. And you find this from time to time. We find it in the book of Acts. Various signs and wonders. This is Acts chapter 5. Many signs and wonders have been regularly done among the people by the hands of the apostles, and they were all together in Solomon's portico. None of the rest, now notice this, none of the rest dared join them. But the people held them in high esteem, and more than ever, believers were added to the Lord. Straight ahead, please. Straight ahead and on the right. Sorry, just trying to find the loop. Nobody dared join them, but people were converted. And we try and make everything user-friendly, as it were, and wonder why people don't join us. It isn't by being the same, it's by being different. By being different that the Lord will bless us. I can think of the Hebrides revival. Do you know about the Hebrides revival? Won't go into the background now, but hundreds of people became Christians. And at one occasion it was noted that God appeared to give his influence in a town. And it was noted that all sorts of people came to the police station. Now, why did they come to the police station? Because they knew that one of the policemen was a Christian. And they wanted to find him to find out how to become Christians themselves. If you are a Christian, people will find out if they want to know. They will find out for themselves. So even there, here was this policeman suddenly became a counsellor, because the Lord had appointed him. Now notice in this section, from 23 onwards, there is no conflict at all. Isaac is back with the Lord in Beersheba, and there is no opposition, no conflict. It's protected all the way through. When the people envied, and this is the final thought, when the people of Gerar envied him, what did they envy? They envied the blessings that he got. They didn't envy the relationship he had. And the relationship is more important than the blessings. And there's a hymn, take the world, but give me Jesus. And it should be that in our lives, that people can't see your relationship. Only you can see your relationship with God. People around you can't. But they can see the blessings that the Lord brings. Don't, my friends, don't chase the blessings, chase the relationship. Because if you've got that relationship, everything else will look after itself.